All right. Hello again, adventures, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is daily vlog number 13, and today we are going to talk about why Call of Cthulhu is the second most popular tabletop RPG in the world. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this, I was in a Twitch buddies chat while they were streaming something. We were just kind of talking about random stuff, and they brought up that D&D is absolutely fine, but it's not really their the thing. Like, they play D&D, but they're significantly more interested in other RPGs just because the kind of fantasy tropes have gotten old for them. They want something that feels different. And they brought up, excuse me, need to get, that's something in my throat. Much better. Okay. So they brought up Call of Cthulhu because they're like, well, that one's really interesting and it's very, very different from D&D, which 100% it is. And I brought up the fact that Call of Cthulhu is the second most played RPG in the world. And that's mostly because in Japan and quite a few different Asian countries, Call of Cthulhu is the number one RPG by a massive amount. And the reason it is actually really interesting. So, way back in the 80s and 90s, I want to say, yeah, it would have to be. Something that started to become significantly more popular with RPG players in Japan specifically was this thing called replays. Now, replays were literally them talking about an RPG campaign, like a session that they had, where they would basically kind of summarize what happened during that session, and a lot of times they would create artwork for it, whether it was a manga or something like that, and those became really, really popular to the point where there's an actual anime that came out in 1990 called Record of Lotus War. And Record of Lotus War was actually... it started off as one of these replays, turned into a manga, and then eventually turned into an anime series. But it's literally a retelling of a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So, fast forward throughout the 90s, and these replays are not only becoming more and more popular, but with the advent of messaging boards and the internet just becoming significantly more popular, it now, in order to get a really high quality replay, you no longer had to have like a publisher or go through a manga company or something like that. You could just publish your replays online. And for whatever reason, the most popular replays started becoming Call of Cthulhu. Part of that was just that it kind of fits in with a lot of the themes that Japanese audiences tend to enjoy, kind of, the Godzilla and Tokatsu, style stuff where you have these huge, ginormous creatures, and, the little guys on the ground just really can't stand up to that. That kind of theme tends to be very, very popular there. Also, the people that make Call of Cthulhu worked very hard to release Japanese to translations as quickly as possible, and the homebrewing community in Japan is massive for Call of Cthulhu. I read an article recently where they actually talk about the fact that if you go into any Japanese store that sells RPGs, you will always find Call of Cthulhu there for sale, and a lot of the products there will not be created by the people that create Call of Cthulhu. It will be all kind of homebrew, self-published stuff. So you had that combined with the fact that these replays are getting more and more popular, and then we had the advent of YouTube. And when YouTube started becoming big, replays just launched. Because again, they had already started the idea of turning a replay into a video was not an original idea. Again, Record of Lotus War came out in 1990, and that was kind of the first really big example of a replay turning into an anime. But once you get to YouTube shooting off, you started having all of these people making replays, putting their own art in there. Sometimes it's animated, sometimes it's just kind of comic book or manga style frames into the things like that. But it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and for whatever reason, Call of Cthulhu was the one that caught on. Part of that, D&D localization has never been particularly great. They tend to focus on their American market because by far, anywhere in the world, the American market is the absolute largest market for tabletop RPGs. Europe is starting to kind of come for that market, but the fact that European markets are significantly smaller. There's a lot of European markets. They're significantly smaller, and each separate market requires their own translation, makes it significantly difficult for a lot of companies to be able to, or basically the entire European market in and of itself, for it to be able to compete with the American market where everything is written in English. And the vast majority of the U.S. speaks English as their primary or secondary language, compared to Europe, where your primary language is probably going to be based on whichever country that you live in, and then your secondary language might be English. It might be used to be French was the big trade language of Europe, where everybody spoke their own language, and then they also spoke French because everybody used French for everything. And I think at one point Italian started to become a little bit more popular. I think during the music, not the music era. During the like classical and Baroque periods, where music was becoming significantly more of a common thing for the aristocracy, you started seeing Italian becoming a little bit more prominent for people learning, just because that was the music language. But yeah, so the American market, by far the largest market. The U.S. is really, really big. Compared to most countries, we're huge. We have well over 330 million people that live here. We have one of the largest GDPs in the world. We have one of the highest, what's it called? Not cost of living. We have one of the highest kind of standards of living. So a lot of people in the U.S. have a fair amount of disposable income, which is necessary for something like an RPG. But that being said, Asian markets are getting much, much bigger. The two markets that tend to be the absolute largest in the world are India and China, and that's because India has something like what? I want to say they have just over 1 billion people that live in India, and then China is something like 2 or 3 billion. They're two massive, massive countries. But a large portion of India lives in, I don't know if it's poverty, but their standard of living tends to be, on average, lower than the U.S. And China has been going through strange kind of fluctuations for decades, where they were living in kind of abject poverty. The average citizen was living in poverty, and then their economy started growing really, really big, and now their economy is starting to die down a little bit because of weird things that have been happening all over the world with economies. But yeah, so Call of Cthulhu, the reason that it is the second most played RPG in the world is a combination of the creators making sure that there are translations. Apparently, it's one of the most played RPGs that are played in that are not played in English, because despite the fact that, again, they do have translations, a lot of people will still play it in English. Again, English, really, really common secondary language all around the world because it is a trade language. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of the people that speak English as a second language speak it better than most Americans, because we tend to butcher our own language. But apparently the number that I saw in this article I was reading is 20% of Call of Cthulhu games are played in, I want to say in Japanese specifically. I might be wrong about that. It might just be that they're played in non-English. I'd have to look at it again, which is more than double any other RPG. So the localization aspects of it were useful, but the real thing that drove Call of Cthulhu compared to anything else were these replays. And I find that fascinating, because effectively the reason Call of Cthulhu is popular is the same reason Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is so popular in the US. It's live plays. And they are slightly different. Replays are not live plays. Live plays, you're literally playing it live or pre-recorded, but you played it live when you recorded it. Whereas replays are just summaries of what happened that have artwork or something attached to them to make them a little bit more digestible. But it is a really, really fascinating thing that these replays not only are massive in Japan and I believe South Korea and parts of China, but that we really don't have an equivalent over here. Again, what's really big in the US is live plays, but the idea of summarizing your D&D games or your tabletop RPG games and making artwork about it to kind of give a visual aspect to it is just not extremely common over here. And I find that really interesting. I actually did that. I had no idea what replays were at the time. I just decided to do kind of combine a draw my life style video, but instead of drawing my life, I drew the campaign I was DMing at the time in one of the friendly local game stores that I used to run in. It's still on this channel somewhere. For the life of me, I can't remember what I called it anymore. And the artwork was incredibly bad. The quality was horrible, but it was a ton of fun. And actually, because I told I got permission from all my players to do this, but I would take liberties and stuff like that to make it a little more interesting, especially when I was drawing. And so I had these two guys who their characters I think were brothers, and just because I was just drawing stuff on this thing as I'm getting a recording of it over my shoulder. I was actually drawing on a wall because that's how my setup was at the time. So I had a whiteboard effectively just plastered on a wall and a camera over my shoulder, and I was just drawing. And I think what it was I was describing each one of the characters, and so I drew this little really bad stick figure of a rogue, and I put a little bubble text bubble around it and said something to the effect of like, "Rogues don't cry." And then because the two brother characters were a rogue and a ranger, and so I draw the ranger in my really bad stick figure drawing, and then I did a bubble just because I was improvising at the time, and I go, "But rangers do," and I drew him with a little tear, and the players saw that, and then at the next session, because I wasn't thinking anything about a commentary on the game, it was just a joke for me. Because I was going off of like the edgy rogue and everything like that, and I come back and they turn to me and they go, "What'd you mean by that?" I was making a joke. I thought it was funny. They go, "No, it was hilarious, but it just kind of like, we never did anything like that." I'm like, no, that was not a commentary on you guys. It was just a joke I came up with when I was drawing really poorly. So yeah, something I would love to see. To be perfectly honest, I wish Critical Role would do this, where because they technically used to have a thing where they kind of did this, but it was basically Danny Carr would get up and kind of summarize what happened in the last episode. So instead of watching a 5-hour long session, you could watch like a 10-minute long video and get caught up really quickly. I would love for replays to take off in the US and just in Western markets in general, because sitting through, again, for Critical Role Campaign 3, I think they're on like episode 83 or 84, something like that. I'm going to actually do the math here just because I have a calculator on my computer. If we go, let's just go 82, because I know they've had at least 82 episodes, and we multiply that by 4 hours is technically a little short for them. They generally go a minimum of 4 hours. I've seen them go 5, sometimes a little over 5. So let's just start with 4 hours. That would mean to catch up on Critical Role Campaign 3, you would need to watch a minimum of 328 hours. And that's a little over 13 days straight of content to catch up. However, if we were to take those 82 episodes and turn them into, 10-minute replays, that turns it to barely 13 hours instead of 13 days. In 13 hours, you can catch up on 13 hours over a long weekend. But 13 days, that will take you, with the fact that you can't just dedicate the entirety of your life to watching Critical Role, and I would never recommend that you do that. That would take you months to get through the backlog if you are doing like... well, let's look at that again. So let's go 13.667 times 24 brings us up to 328. Yeah, that's what we had. So 328. So let's go 328 divided by, let's just say you do 4 hours a day. That's like one session a day, roughly. Again, that's going to take you 82 days. That should have been really simple math because that's how we made the original thing. But if you do one episode a day, it will take you 2 months of never missing a single day to be able to catch up currently on Critical Role. And that's just nonsense. So, yeah, I would love to see replays become a thing in the Western market in general. Obviously, a replay does take a significant amount of time and effort because you have to do a traditional replay like they do in Japan. You have to create some kind of art, so there's a visual aspect for it. You actually have to write out the script of the replay itself. So there is, and then, creating the video and everything like that, all of that is a lot of work. But I would love to be able to catch up on any number of RPGs, not just Critical Role, but any of the stuff that Brennan Lee Mulligan does over on, I think it's Dropout. There's a lot of really, I'd love to see Seattle by Night or any of the by Night campaigns have replays. Like, those would be amazingly awesome to be able to still be kind of a part of the fandom and still be kind of caught up on stuff that's going on without having to dedicate the entirety of your life to do it. And maybe, who knows, maybe next Daily December, that will be something that I will try and do for my December campaign, is maybe I'll try and figure out a way to do some replays of stuff like that. Maybe that'll be something that I start doing for all of my Kika campaigns so that people can start being just have the ability to kind of catch up on Kika campaigns and be able to jump in whenever they want. Again, I have no idea how I would do that. I am not a visual artist. I have never been a visual artist. When I did I think I called it D&D Recap. That's what it was called. I called it D&D Recap. When I did my D&D Recap series, it was stick figures. And that was before my tremor got as bad as it is and before all the disability and stuff like that. So I don't know if I could even attempt that anymore. But yeah, it would definitely be fun. Maybe I could find a way to do it on like a tablet or something. Because I have a cheap ass tablet that I mostly use to watch movies in bed. Because I have a little arm that I have mounted on my side table, so I can like lay down and I can just watch, Netflix or something as I'm about to go to sleep. Because I can't just go to sleep. That would be far too easy for my brain. But anyway, I think this is absolutely fascinating. The reason that Call of Cthulhu is the number 2 RPG in the world is because the Japanese market has become significantly larger than it used to be, and there really isn't the competition there that there is here. I'm not saying that there is no competition or anything like that. No, there's tons of really great games. There's a particular game that what's it called? Maybe that's not what it is. I don't know. It's called like Sword something. I can't remember what it's called, but it's an RPG that is created specifically in Japan, and there's been many kind of modifications to it, and it's kind of their version of D&D. They do have Dungeons and Dragons over there. It's just nowhere near as popular as it is over here. Yeah, I'm not saying that there isn't any competition in the market, but in the Japanese market, Call of Cthulhu basically holds the same position that D&D does in the Western market, which is D&D is the RPG, and everybody else is vying for second place. And in Japan, Call of Cthulhu is the RPG. Everyone else is vying for second place. And again, the big reason for that is these replays. And again, if you want to see what a replay is, because the vast majority of replays are going to be in Japanese or Japanese, Korean. I don't know if they're a really big thing in China or not, but unless you speak those one of those languages, you're not going to be able to enjoy them. But Record of Lotus War is it's on Crunchyroll. They have a dub and a sub on there. So if you want to watch one of the first really big replays that turned into an actual anime series, check it out. Again, it's early 90s anime, so it may not be your thing, but it is a fascinating thing to watch, to realize that is one of the reasons that the tabletop RPG market exists in Japan, is because of things like that. It's just absolutely fascinating. So, yeah, if anybody watching this is aware of English-based replays, somebody that plays an RPG and kind of summarizes their games with some sort of visual additions to it, let me know. Post links in the comments or whatever, just to YouTube videos. Do not post links anywhere else, so they may disappear very, very quickly. But YouTube, I can generally feel that YouTube links are safe. Anything else, I'm going to go, nope, block. But I would love to see English-based replays. And if you guys are interested in me doing replays of any of the campaigns that I've done, let me know in the comments down below. Again, I have no idea how I do it. I might partner up with one of my players to have them create a piece of artwork or two during the session or shortly after the session. I do know one of my players specifically likes to doodle and draw during this session as a way to kind of focus and keep invested in the game. It's another thing that I don't think a lot of people understand, specifically about artists, is for a DM, especially if you're DMing at a table, the thing that you're generally looking for is you look around, you look for people's eyes. Because if they're looking at you, that means they're focusing on what you're doing. That means you're doing a good job. Doesn't always, but that's the mindset. And if you see someone that's just always staring at their character sheet or staring at their lap or something, you assume that they're just not interested in the game. And that's not it. Depending on the person. Some people are playing on their phone and so that you want to avoid. But I know Mike Krahulik, when he first started playing D&D with the original Acquisitions Incorporated podcasts, way back in 4th edition, he used to spend large amounts of time like doodling in the margins of his character sheet, because that's just how his brain works. And like I said, I have at least one of my players that likes to make doodles and drawings while we are playing, and then every so often they share them with the rest of us, and they're amazing. So yeah, maybe that's a thing I could do. I can basically harass my players into creating artwork for me that I can use for these summary things, because it would definitely help with my really, really bad memory. But then there would also be the issue of, can I handle another kind of scheduled video or not? Who knows? But like I said, I find it fascinating, and I hope you guys do too. Anyway, that's going to be all for me today. I will see you guys in the next time. All right? Bye-bye.